Hi there, and welcome to a new episode of Impact Talks. Today we have Reina-Flor Okori with us. She's a four-time Olympian with over 20 years on track representing France and Equatorial Guinea. Using her sports legacy and African soul blueprint, Reina inspires coaches, international businesses, executives, and athletes to redefine the new psychology of winning and leading. I love the fact that you've been an Olympian, have switched over to the business industry. I'm really excited to get to know you today. Can you please tell the audience where they might know you from and what you do?
Well, Lova, thank you so much for that's a beautiful introduction. And by the way, I really love your name. It's really a beautiful name. I come from the world of top sports, and as many people know, it is a very special journey, and it has been part of my life for more than 25 years. And of course, I have learned a lot, and I'm so happy to be here today to share of a little bit of this experience. And yeah, with my big French accent, as you can hear, I speak English, but I am a French. I am French, so my accent is really huge.
Yeah, I think it's very good English, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Maybe tell me and the listeners, of course, how did it all start? Where did you find the passion to become an athlete? Is it something I've seen, for instance, the movie Eddie the Eagle, where he just wanted to be an Olympian since he was really small? Was it something like that, or was it you had a talent and you had a good coach? How did it all start?
Yeah, first of all, I really have to say that that journey started in Africa, where I come from. I grew up. I came in France when I was 3 years old, and the reason why I came to France is because in Equatorial Guinea it was not longer a safe place to live because of dictatorship. So my parents they decided to come to France to offer me and my brothers a better future. I wasn't really into sports. I was a little dreaming girl, wandering around, and somehow someone saw my talent, and I really didn't expect that. So my sport teacher at the time saw that I had some talent on sports, and he made some tests, but I didn't know that to really validate that. And one day he asked me if I wanted to go to a competition. And I said, yeah, why not? For me, it was really fun because when you are an immigrant, most of the time in France, but also other countries, you live in the neighborhood. And that's a beautiful place, by the way, because we are experiencing multiculturalism. I grew up with people from all over the world, from Brazil, from Spain, from Chile, from Asia. So it was not for me that bad, but still that opportunity to go outside of the neighborhood to do a competition was really exciting for me. So that's how it started. And I had no technique, no clue. I could run fast. I just had to run like Forrest. I always say that because it's really that's how it felt. Run, that's it. And then I won the first competition, and that's how the story went. I won the French competition. I won the international competition, and 20 years later, I became part of the best French athletes in the hurdles.
How old were you when that first competition was won?
I was 13 years old.
Wow. And then from 13 years old to you becoming a first time Olympian, how old were you then?
24. And that's a very important information for entrepreneurs or people who are starting the company. It takes 10 years to become a champion. Even if the talent is there, we have to build this out.
Yeah, patience, big thing. We get a lot of startups, and that's the number one thing that we're trying to say. Like, even when we started startup funding events, we kind of in the planning assumed it was going to be like 5, 6 years. But so for you to go through those 10, 11 years, I want to cover multiple topics. Things like I've heard how mindfulness works in their meditation. Obviously, athletes have a really strong mind. But I also first want to cover the history, and those 11 years you getting to that first Olympic Games, and what it took. How can I imagine this? What if, for instance, somebody has a child or they're going through it very young? Um, should they go through this, Olympic Games? How do you combine that with school? What was your journey? Did you go to college, for instance, or was it full-time athlete?
Oh, a lot of questions in one sentence. I'm going to try to answer it very well. Um, for people who, my parents were not pushing me into sports, and that's something I'm really thankful, because actually my mother just kind of gave it all to my coach. And she was not coming to trainings and not so much to competition. So my parents were not pushing me to be an Olympic athlete or a top athlete. And that's, I have an explanation. It is also that, coming from Africa, it is still in the mind of African family that if you live in Europe, you become a doctor, you become a psychologist, you don't become a top athlete. So in the conscience of my mother, I think she didn't really took it seriously. She was really happy that I had finally found something I would stick on. So the mentor, my first coach, was the one who really saw the supernatural talent that I had. And that's something very interesting, because when you are gifted, you do things effortlessly. You are an unconscious leader. So because of that mentor, I really could grow up on my athletic skills. But I was like a wild animal. I was like a wild horse that you have to learn how to stay, follow the instructions and stay calm, and so I really was fortunate to have that person who was patient for me, actually. And he was a kind of Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah.
If you are familiar with Karate Kid. I really, I was really like, okay, I had this gift, this talent. Everything he would tell me to do in terms of execution, I would do it very well because it was effortless. So that was my super talent, to do things effortlessly. But it's good, but it's also dangerous, because when you are so talented, you can win everything. I really had the chance to win the national championships and to be part of the best juniors. And that was the first step. Okay, so before becoming an Olympian, I have trained myself to become the best in France, and then to become the best in Europe, and to be part of the best in the world in every different categories. So if you compare that to entrepreneurship, it's like you try to do different steps to grow slowly, but not shooting to the stars suddenly. But really, I had this huge opportunity to have that mentor. He had the program in his head. He saw my talent. He saw that in 10 years, she would become an Olympian. Even earlier, because I was selected for the Olympic Games of Sydney 2000. But I wasn't well prepared. But that's another story. I can share it if you want.
So, were you then doing full-time athlete, or how did you combine it with school?
I was a regular student. So I didn't have any time management. I was not in a sports school. So I was just following a normal school, and I did literature studies, letters. And then I got the diploma to go to the university. And yeah, I followed a very natural process. It was not easy, of course.
How did you combine everything? Because I can imagine your time management was getting tested.
I think I had great mentors. It's all come back to that, because in the education system, when you are not inside a sports school, so a school which is dedicated to sports, some people think that's not good. she's spending too much time on track and she's tired or some things like that. But I had great mentors inside the school, and the director of the school was also aware. So people were very kind with me. And I until today I don't know how I made it because I still made it up to actually, that's not good to say that because I really believe that being an athlete, it is what has transformed my capacity to become more intelligent in learning fast, adapting to circumstances, and being able to deliver performance, whatever it is. So, for example, to be on time for the final exams, to believe that I could make it. So, yeah, I did MBA in EDEC Business School, which is one of the five best business school in France and in Europe in finance. So I think sports has really helped me to understand what time management is and how to stay confident in the capacity of delivering the right performance the right day at the right time.
You talk about mentors. Is it one mentor that you had, that original sports coach, or were there multiple mentors? My question to that then is, where did you find those mentors, and what were the biggest learning lessons from having a mentor?
Yes, it's a beautiful question because when you are a talent, imagine it's like you are a diamond that needs to be prepared, but you don't see that in yourself. And but these people they see it. So I was really fortunate to have mentors who have seen this talent. And after so many years of being on track, I understood what are the major key factors for peak performance and talent mastery. And I have had mentors in those five key factors. So the first one is mental health. So mental health is really what helps us to be aligned mentally, to be able to stay focused, to be able to do the right movement, but also to be able to be fulfilled and happy. Most of the time in top sport, we only talk about mental health to be a peak performer. So, like someone who really can handle the competition, but there are other layers of mental health. Then there is also the nutritional health. How come that your superpower is your talent? How can you make it how can you master it? Well, it's really through nutrition. And athletes are their body. They need their body to perform. And the most important way for that is nutrition. But again, what kind of nutrition? And my mentors have taught me how to understand my epigenetic, how to fuel myself as a French coming from Africa, living in a Western environment, and learn how to stay away or minimize the impact of inflammations. Because when you do top sports, it's really high demands, and the body suffers a lot from inflammations. So nutrition is here to bring balance and to help you in a cellular way. But many people don't have access to that knowledge. That's why many athletes have injuries, and maybe at the end they do some doping because they don't really understand how to biohack themselves. So I have this opportunity, and I think that is what has helped me to be until the age of 35 a top athlete. So that's the second factor. The third factor is physical health. So in that sense is how to learn how to use your body in a very efficient way. And that's almost like mathematics. And especially hurdles, 100 meters hurdles. We have 10 hurdles to run. Each hurdles have 8 meters 50 from distance. In order to jump over each hurdles, you have to do a straight jump of 3 meters. It means you put your foot on 3 meters before the hurdles and you have to jump over it. That's really mathematical because you have to do it while running. So, and that's funny because when some people say sports, it's not for clever people Well, I can prove this is really mathematics and it takes a lot of training. So to be really good physically, it's really important. And I had great coaches for that. The best coach actually in France, who had trained also athletes who were Olympic champions. So it was really a good, um, I was really fortunate. Then there is the personal marketing pillar strategy. It means how can you um, use your talent, your voice to get access to sponsorships, to get contracts, to finance your career. Because Olympic athletes are not born, they become Olympic athletes. But to be able to finance that career, you need to be inspiring, you need to find companies will really value your performances and your personality. So I really have learned how to master that personal marketing and to be able to be brand ambassadors from huge companies such Adidas for more than 10 years, etc. Yes, so the final pillar about personal marketing for me it's really important because today we are in a major crisis for sports. For example, athletes have to find ways to find sponsors to finance their career, and we cannot rely on the federations. The governments cannot finance all the sports industry. There is a huge problem, and how athletes can really succeed in financing their mission, becoming an Olympian, is through the mastery of personal marketing. So that's very an important tool, and it is also part of my passion today to train athletes, but also executives and MBA candidates to to master the art of personal marketing. So how to become champion in the heart of the people, because at the end it's really not about us, it's how we can inspire other people to invest, because it's like a mirror effect. They can identify with our struggle or with our passion, and so that's really important. And the final one is about finances, of course. The finance is really important because when you are a top athlete, you suddenly earn a lot of money. And you have to learn how to manage that, because a career in top sport it's only 20 years, 25 years. And many talents don't know how to handle this money. So the key factor here is education on finance and how to create wealth, or how to transform your talent into diamonds. And that's something that a lot of champions don't learn because they are unconscious champion and they trust everybody, because trust is the most fundamental thing we need to have when we want to become a champion. So I have had very bad bankers who have made me bad financial investments. I was screwed up by fake agents, and I really experimented the hard way to
Okay,
lose
so
money
much
because of.
to unpack there. I really want to cover actually each point. I want to start with each point is so relevant, but I want to start with the first one. You said mental health. Everybody knows athletes would be the pinnacle of mental health. But if you look at that and you bring it over into this industry, the tech industry, entrepreneurship, I'd say there are these jobs where you really need your brain, and so obviously you need all those 5 points you mentioned. But how do you, as an Olympian, what kind of coaches did you have? What were techniques that you were using? How did your day look like in mental health?
Okay, the first thing is for mental health is that we are not our performance. And it's not so easy when you're a top athlete to understand that, because you need your ego to perform. You really need to have that energy, that drive to go and get that victory. So the ego takes part. But where many people mistake is that the ego is at the service of the performance, not ourselves. Whether we win or lose, we are a winner. And that's a very important statement to teach to young children or talents or companies. Because if we follow a vision, a purpose, which is bigger than ourselves, then we have more success, actually. And so it's like a challenge because the ego is always coming to bother us on that sense. So now that's the first thing. For the practical thing on mental is we learn different strategies, different tools to be able to stay focused. For example, when I was to the Olympic Games of Athens 2004, I had a big lesson. I have learned a big lesson on how to learn to stay relaxed. Because you cannot push all the time. You cannot be pushing, pushing, pushing. We need to learn that in the middle of the struggle, in the middle of the race, at the most important moment of our life, we have to learn to switch off the pressure and relax. How can you do that? And I have learned it the hard way when I was at the Olympic Games of Athens 2004. At the call room, the final race before we go to the final. Okay, so the call room, I can let you imagine. It's a 2 square meters room where we stand with 8 athletes during 25 minutes, sometimes 40, looking at each other, waiting until we go to the line to run our race. We are going to run against each other and we are there waiting. So this moment is very important because you're going to give it all. And it was my first Olympic Games. I was so excited. I was a talent. I knew I could make it to the final. I knew I could even have the potential to win a medal. But suddenly, there were like 6 athletes who were talking like we are talking. They were having a conversation, drinking, as if they were drinking a coffee together. And I was witnessing that, and I was really becoming mad. I was thinking, what? You think you're trying to disturb me now? Haha, I get you. No, 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 I don't get it. I'm going to kill you. You will see what you will see. And I was starting putting pressure on my head and my head. What was happening there? They have understood the power of switching off and switching on. These are very specific triggers that they have learned. You can't be pushing all the time. And so at the result, when the race was starting, I was so excited and at the same time so stressed that I didn't run the best I could because I was burned out. So that's some things like that. So for mental, there are some strategies that you can learn to really reach peak performance. You need to learn how to master the state of flow. So to be able to relax and to unserious yourself a little bit so that you can keep playing the game.
How did you, I mean, you learned it through practicality, but let's say we're talking now, an entrepreneur, an athlete is in a very pressure situation.
Yeah.
And they're now in this situation. They remember the story that you just said, but it doesn't really apply to them. So was there a certain breathing technique that you did? I guess I'm fishing for more practicality into.
Yes, I understand.
Is it really just a mindset, or is there really a technique behind it?
Of course, practice makes perfect. We need to practice that often. And when you are on the call room, you can imagine that you are sitting at the bank before you're going to pitch your project, you know. The company said, yes, we want to hear you. Come at that time, that day. And you're waiting and they're not on time. They make you wait and wait and wait. That's the call room image, okay? Instead of burning out, then there is ways to defocus about the outcome because you are already prepared. So if you have some books, you can read some books. If you know some people, you can talk about the weather or I don't know. And of course, the ultimum exercise is cardiac coherence. So it's a breathing exercise that you can do it in 5 minutes. And it's that you breathe in and you breathe out. And it's really slow, but actually it helps you to relax your brain. and it calms you down. It doesn't make you low, like no, but it's just supporting your nervous system to be more in balance.
Oh, you mean like controlling your heart rate variability? So then you breathe in at a consistent pace, and then your heart rate becomes more consistent when it's beating.
Yes, that's it.
I think I used a device called Heart Math. I bought it like 6 years ago. It's an infrared scanner that you attach to your ear, and then it actually on the app shows you your heart rate variability, and as you breathe, you can stabilize it. Um,
Yes,
that's really interesting.
that's
Cool.
powerful.
So that's really quite useful, actually, because what you described there with that room, it actually, and the example you used with the pitching is very relatable. And then I wasn't even thinking, how would I apply this in my life, for instance? But yeah, the amount of moments where you have to pitch instead of just like worrying yourself or adding more information to what you're going to pitch, maybe just grab a cup of coffee and have a conversation
Yes.
is indeed better.
So some athletes are very, very strong in using triggers. So we call it triggers. Is, for example, before you enter the door, you can train in your mind, say, okay, now I am entering the door of my victory. So I change my state. It can be every day you go to take the metro, for example, and then you're going to train that. From the moment that I step in the metro, I am the CEO of a multi-billion dollar company. I don't know, you know.
So you anchor a feeling towards entering a certain room or something.
Yes, that's also very important.
Oh wow, that's yeah, that's very useful. I didn't even think about that. We had on the last episode we had a memory world champion. So he's really good at remembering things, and he does it for competitions. And he was explaining if you could use certain locations in your life that you always go to, and you anchor a certain memory to it, then you will remember it much better. And that's what he uses during his competitions to remember a lot of things really fast. And so what you're kind of explaining is kind of what he explained with the memory, but then you anchor a feeling to it. And
Yes,
then as you walk through the door, you're like in a certain state. You're a family person or an entrepreneur, or
yes.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, every elite athlete have that. From the moment they enter the stadium to the moment they're going to deliver their performance, they have all kind of little mental tools to keep moving forward, to keep that state of flow.
Do you have some examples of actual mental tools like these that you were doing at some of the Olympics?
Yeah, so what I just told you, the breathing in, breathing out, when, for example, the starting blocks, it's about you ready to go, and they say on your marks, you know. Before they say on your marks, it takes like 10 minutes. And so you are here in the stadium and 80,000 people watching at you and 1 million, I don't know, on the TV. And the best example I can share is Usain Bolt. He's really good at doing that. He was, because he retired. But there are some videos online, you can check them, how he was using the power of happiness, the power of love, to refuel himself positively by giving handshakes to people, by waving up at the people and doing a little dance. It was actually a way to remove the pressure and to refuel himself with positive energy. So that's something that it's a very positive trigger to use.
So he uses the crowds to absorb positive energy and then pretty much turn off the pressure, like you said.
Yeah, and it's a win-win situation, because what people are coming for inspiration, for dreams, you know, and that's something very, I have learned it very well. When we are going to talk with a decision maker, actually we better create rapport with that person, dive into that person first, instead of talking about us. And that's how we deliver the performance the best way. Because if we are very well prepared, it's not about what we can do or how we do it, it's the impact we're going to bring to people actually at the end. And that's the biggest source of joy and also drive, positive energy.
How close are the athletes when you get to an Olympic Games? I mean, do you hang out with other countries? Did you hang out with people like a Usain Bolt or something?
That's a very beautiful question. I always say beautiful because I don't call sports like a business. For me, it's beauty. It's the beauty of sports, and that's the beauty of sports. When I was going to the Olympics or to an international competition, I was suddenly surrounded by people from all over the world, different shades, colors, background, genders, social backgrounds, and that was so wonderful. I was always looking forward to that. We were all gathering for the love of sports, and we were actually representing the world, and that's especially at the Olympics. So, yes, there was a competition inside the stadium, but when it was finished, we were all together, at the hotel, at the lobby, or at parties, and we will all hang out together, and that was so wonderful. And for me, it's the greatest gift I have learned, and I also recognize that it's a big value for me to be in a multicultural and cultural environment with people from different backgrounds and cultures.
How many athletes come to an Olympic Games? So when the competition is over, I'm assuming you're all in the same campus spots type of scenario. So then, how many people are there that are Olympians?
There are at least 10,000
Wow.
athletes.
But then you don't actually hang out that much with everybody. You're hanging out probably with like small crowds.
Yeah, we are all like small villages, The country finally became like, there is the area from the French team, the area from the USA team, and based according to the landscape of the country, of course. For example, the USA team, they are huge. They are so much, but the French team, we were also a lot. But when I represented my country, Equatorial Guinea, we were like five members. So it's a whole completely story. But at the end, because of this dynamic of being together, being united for the love of sports, so yeah, I could meet all many people. And there was one place where we would all meet was at the restaurant. The restaurant was this huge tent, and I remember one day I was eating. I was alone and I was eating, and suddenly I take my head off, and I didn't realize that Rafael Nadal has just sat in front of me
Who
to
who
eat.
sat next to you?
Rafael Nadal,
Oh yeah.
and with his one of his coach, and but I we were kind of used to it, so I didn't really like, oh yeah, no, okay, good, I eat, you eat, bye. But this is, yeah, after times I can realize it's that's the beauty of sports, and especially the Olympics.
That's pretty cool. Interesting for me because obviously I watch the Olympics, and then how does it work with representing country? Do you get to choose which country you represent? Because, well, or do you represent two countries at the same time? How does that work? Because I think the first time you went out, you went for France, right?
Yes, I have always been a French athlete. My education on sport has been in France, but I'll never forget where I come from. And this was deep in my heart. I really wanted to use my sport as a medium to inspire my siblings to understand that if you have access to the resources, you can make it. Especially in Africa, because being athletes, it's like a supernatural talent. I mean, most of Afro descendant athletes are really talented, natural talent in sports. But not everybody make it. It's all question. It's all about the resources. So that's a very important point. To be part of a national team, you have to be the best. There is no other opportunity, especially in sports where you have to run and be obviously the best. For example, in some artistic sports, you rely on the mood of the will of a jury, And some athletes have really suffered a lot. I'm thinking about Soria Bonali. Soria Bonali, who was a
Yeah, I
very
heard.
famous French skater, but because at that moment she didn't look like people expected, she was always bad. She could never win, even if she was the
Yeah.
best.
There was a Netflix documentary about that actually, so it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, even if she was outstanding the competition, she had to be on that prejudice. So in athletics, no, you win or you lose. If you are on the first, you make it. That's very hard because there is no other way. So I had figured out in my head very fast when I was 20 years old, and I had failed at the selection of the Olympic Games of Sydney 2000. I became third, but the federation decided that I was too young and I was not able to represent the country. And I really remember that like it was yesterday. I said to my coach, next Olympic Games, I'm going to be the first. There's no way I don't make these Olympics because someone, but when you are the first, you make it. And yeah, I became the first. And I really made it all through my career to be the best in France. So with the if I think about it, I think when you have a talent or when you are passionate with your career or with your purpose, I think it's really important still to focus on the joy and the happiness of being able to fulfill that talent and not to do it to prove people wrong. I have found myself in situations that I really wanted to prove people wrong. And that kind of made me fail, actually. I remember being at the Olympic Games of London 2012. I was part of the best athletes, but I had faced again one situation that I found really unfair. And so when I was to the Olympics, I had in my mind that I wanted to take revenge. That was very negative emotion. Sometimes negative emotion is not so good. And so when I went to the semifinals, so the last race before the final, I did a false start. It means that I went out before the gun, and you only have one chance. So then who is to blame? Only you. So that's something, a big lesson. I was crying, I was in tears, and my mother who came to see me, that was not so often, she was like, I will never come back again. Because the emotion I have, in front of millions of people, you do that, it feels like you're nothing. And that's a big lesson. We cannot perform with the will to prove people wrong as much as possible if we are really tapping into that positive energy.
So, how do you explain that to, let's say, same situation, you now looking back and you'd actually be there, you see yourself, um, you know, going towards the start, and you have the moment to say something. How do you, you have, let's say, less than 5 minutes or something like that to explain that you have to turn a negative emotion into a positive emotion. How do you switch that? How do you change a person who's so out to go for revenge, and say, hey, this isn't the right feeling, you should be doing more like what Usain Bolt did with the soaking up the positive. How do you do that to someone who's like so obsessed and obviously going for revenge?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. I will try to answer it the best because this is what we all share in common as human beings. Everybody has his own way of expressing his anger or sadness or scarcity. We all have our ways to transform it. But now I have learned to answer that question. But before I didn't know. And there are three fundamental questions that we can ask ourselves to remember why we are here. What is it that we love the most? What is it that we really, really, really love the most? And for me, it was to be there among all these talent athletes, to be part of this wonderful event, to share my passion. What makes me so sad? It was this feeling of not being worthy, actually, this feeling of not being accepted. And I had given space to that emotion too much. Then it became an anger. So these are three questions. What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What makes you so mad, so angry? If we have the capacity to analyze these emotions, we can switch quickly. We can make the right decisions. For example, if we want to join a company and we have a conversation with the person, based on the words the person will use, we will identify our value. If the person is only talking about, we want to win, we want to be the best, we want to get 10 million euro in 3 years, maybe then we can analyze it like, I'm going to have to prove that I can be part of this company. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying, but these three fundamental questions can help us to really adjust ourselves quickly. I still use them today in my career to analyze if I'm still following my path, if I'm not doing something based on fear of being rejected, for example, or based on the strong will to prove people wrong. Because I remember when I was that age, someone pushed on that button, you're not worthy, you can't make it, and I'm going to prove you wrong. That's really that, to be able to stay in this, on this good line, like on the corridor of our destiny, is really to be able to answer these three questions very fast.
Can you give an example of a moment that you did that in your athletic career and one where you did that in your business career?
2016 Olympic Games of Rio was my last Olympic Games. I was a flag bearer. I was an ambassador. Can you imagine that? You represent a whole country. Everybody is cheering up for you. You're like the face of the country. And Olympics and sports, it's almost like politics. Athletes have a huge pressure to represent. And I really wanted to represent. But the day before my race, I got an injury. The day before my race. And I went to the medicals and I asked them, can we do something? And they said, well, we can put some inflammation, some injections, painkillers, and I think you will make it. Yes, please do anything. I cannot miss that race. So the next day, the pain is not gone. I'm like walking like a injured, and I try not to show it. I tried to do my warming up. I tried to do the hurdles. And then the call room start calling me Reina-Flor Okori. One time, Reina-Flor Okori. 2 times. 3rd time, you don't show, it's finished. My coach tells me, now it's up to you. I've done my job. So you have to find your ways now. And I say, okay, I go. I cannot don't do it. But then I am at the call room and I'm thinking, should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I run? If I run, I'm falling in front of 10,000 people, in front of my family, in front of all people cheering for me. And if I run, what if I don't run good? I didn't know what to think anymore. And I had one moment. I talked to my psychologue, called her quickly. I told her, please tell me something because I'm not able to think anymore. And she told me, think about your son. Because the story is that before the Olympic Games, I became pregnant. And I was at the Olympic Games 9 months after giving birth.
Oof,
so
wow.
I was, like many athletes do today, I was an Olympic mom. But then I had to answer myself, is that worthy? Is that worthy? And then I got the answer, no, it's not worthy. So I decided not to run.
Oh wow, that's
And you can
intense.
see it's line 7 empty. The rest is, I won't tell all the details because then I had to justify, why didn't you show up? Why didn't you run? Why did you? But I had to understand that it's not worthy. So on a sports career, it was really painful. But sometimes we really have, athletes can push very far, to compromise. But at the end, you look at yourself and you are 40, 50, and you remember that moment. I'm proud I did it because I kept focused on my values.
Before we move on to the next point, I have 100% that I'll probably get this question in the comments or something. You went from, giving birth to being an Olympic athlete at the Rio Games in 9 months. In my, circle, that only happens on TV on Hollywood or something like that. So I always wondered when women did that, like a super accomplishment. But what did you do? Did you take a break? Like, how long was your break before you started exercising? How did you get so fast into shape? Because obviously I can imagine you got much heavier as you were going through the pregnancy, so then you probably were not in the best shape. I think maybe one of the worst shapes because you were an Olympic athlete before you were pregnant. So can you walk us through that experience of getting back into shape after being pregnant?
Thank you so much for asking me that because, yeah, today there are more and more Olympic moms, and also in the world of labor, many women are pregnant and come back to work. But there is something different with being an athlete. You have to be in top form to be able to perform, to be able at least to jump, carry the weight of your body. The process of delivering is that the pelvic floor just go down and there is no stability anymore. It has to be strong again. If you are not an athlete, you can maybe manage and go back to work. Nobody sees it. But if you're an athlete, you can't jump, you can't run. So you have to be sure everything is strong again, the pelvic floor, to be able to be back. So the process for me has to be active on a daily basis, but not rushing, for example, through Pilates, through yoga, through very specific cardio trainings, but walking, for example, there is a whole strategy to follow to be able to be back in shape 9 months after giving birth. But it should not be forcing. It should not be something that gives you pressure. It is a natural, actually, process. And I really encourage every woman to do that. Because actually, when her pelvic floor is not strong, whether we are an athlete or not, it feels really bad. Even for a male. This area is like the core area. If we have a strong core, we feel empowered. If we don't have a strong core, we feel like everything can bother us. So for me, it was really that. When I realized that I was pregnant, I kept training until month 4. And then from the 4th month, I started adapting my training. So no germs, no, just only things without too much pressure. And I was training with the Pilates coach to really keep the muscles in motion, to keep the memory of the body alive. Because I really have learned that, and this is something important for everybody, why it is important to exercise on a daily basis. Because the muscles have a memory. And if we don't activate them, they deprogram themselves. Every function on a muscular way, if it's not activated, it deprograms itself. So I was
Yeah.
always staying active with mobilizing every muscles, but with very smooth exercise. And also the cardiovascular training to keep the heart training. Also
Well,
for
what
the
kind of
liver,
cardiovascular training was that?
walking, cycling, everything.
When you say walking and biking, I mean can imagine it's not the same walking and biking as for me. Are you walking fast, and what are the distances that you're walking?
At least walking on a daily basis or every 2 days, for example, it's really as long as
And
you
how many kilometers?
want to,
Oh,
not
okay,
so
so it's
much.
like basic walking. Okay.
Yes, basic walk. Yes. And a lot of breathing exercise. So the cardiac coherence exercise I told you about, it's very good to really support also the delivery, to have a painless delivery. And that's a very easy word to say for many women, because many women until today have a painful delivery. Whereas the secret is to learn to stay in the peak, in the state of flow, to be relaxed, because actually the body does its work. It does the work. Of course, there are some complications for some people. So I'm not going to say that for everybody it works perfectly. But most of the time, it's really about learning how to relax and breathing, not pushing hard, but relaxing and let the flow happen. And then directly after deliver, we ask women to wait 6 weeks. But instead of doing nothing during these 6 weeks, there are things to be done. For example, wrapping your belly, massaging it every day with shea butter, put cold water on it because there is still extra blood, so to remove all the residual, daily massage, and this is a mix of my sports experience, but also my African heritage. You know, when a woman gives birth, during 3 months, comes someone from the family to take care of that person, and she gets massages, she get nurtured. For that, after
Oh.
3 months, she shows up like a fresh flower again in front of her husband. So, and in Europe, I know, and mostly in the Netherlands where I live right now, women have to they deliver, and the next day they go home, and then bye bye, good luck.
Yeah, pretty much. That's
Good
true.
luck with your child, and So I really took that. And the last thing I could say is that I saw my peers, so female athletes, who came back very good, even stronger after pregnancy. So I trusted that I could do it. My coach, Patricia Girard, who was also a gold medalist, an Olympic medalist in 100 meters hurdles, she had gone through that, and she came back very strong. And she was telling me, don't worry, you'll make it, you'll be on time, you'll be fine. So it had helped me a lot.
So if we would dissect it, it's obviously like prepping your body, making sure you still walk and not just sit with Ben and Jerry's or something like that. Obviously, you can do all of that, but keep walking, keep exercising your body before that. Not too much, of course. And then once you give birth, you said 6 weeks, like very, very calm and just massaging and stuff like that.
Yes.
And then after the 6 weeks, you start again very slow with the walking, or when do you start proper Olympic training?
Well, actually, because the sport is a lot of visualization. Okay, so you start already the daily routine of visualization. From the moment that I was pregnant, I knew I would make it to the Olympics. So I was already, for me, it was clear. My goal, my vision was there, and I kept it alive in my brain. So I knew what I was involved in when I delivered. So I was keeping on this daily practice on visualization of the positive emotion of me being at the Olympic for my country, but not for the sake of victory, but for the purpose. Why is it that I wanted to be there? What was the reason why I really wanted to be there? So I really cherished that vision in my heart. And the second thing is that I was building things up slowly and focusing, of course, on the pelvic floor. If you start after 6 weeks, doing the hypopressive breathing exercise. So even men can do that. It's just a deep tissue abs exercise, I would say, but it's not for the abs. It's for the first layer of abs, which are around the pelvic floor. These are the ones responsible for the beautiful stand that we can have and the six packs, you know. But
What is this called, the
the
exercise?
pelvic floor, it is called the hypopressive exercise. So
Hypopressive.
yeah, so it means that when you breathe in, you have to put your belly out, and when you breathe out, you have to slowly, slowly, slowly put the belly inside, and then activate the pelvic floor like an elevator um, to the top. So this is a very simple exercise, but if you practice it daily, you build a very strong core. Then in 3 months, you can be back, you know.
So how long are you doing these exercises per day? 30 minutes and once a day, or how many times?
Yeah, like 30 minutes, but not 30 minutes of breathing in, breathing out. Maybe it's, you always have to incorporate breathing in the training. Okay, if you do push up, sorry, I have to do the moves.
Ah, okay.
You
Yeah,
always
interesting.
have to breathe in, breathe out. If you're walking, breathe in, breathe out, and you connect the pelvic floor with the breathing exercise. If you are doing a plank exercise, you breathe in, you breathe out. So you're not moving, but actually inside it's working. And it is that dynamics that really helps you build strong core, and then you can start building up things, doing more explosivity, doing more strength exercise, and then start running, and then start sprinting, and then start hurdling, you know.
And
So
so the first part, the visualization, I've always read all these books about how athletes do it. Now you're actually here, so I wanted to ask you, how were you taught to visualize? Is it like a vision board, you like in the book The Secret, where you just have pictures that you print out and you have them all over your house? Or how do you do visualizing? And how many times a day? How long are those sessions? How is it for you?
that's a very good question, because really top sport is about precision in execution. So everything is really, really well planned, so that it's important to visualize every details. But if we don't attach emotion on that, then it doesn't make the result, because we are human beings, you know, we are not machines. So we need to attach the emotion. So the first idea is to have a vision. Okay, so a vision, of course, which would be greater than ourself. It doesn't need to become a world champion or to become Mother Teresa. It can be just to succeed in losing that 10 pounds you want to lose. Why? Because then you're going to have more energy. Why you have more energy? Because then you have more time to spend with your nephews or husband. Why? Then you feel more in love. That's what I mean. A vision which is bigger than yourself. So really answer the why properly. Why is it that you really want to go there or reach that destination? And then it's the how. In order to lose 10 pounds, what do I have to do? I have to change my approach on nutrition. How do I do that? I have to understand what is my epigenetics, how my body works. Okay, then I know what I need to eat. Okay, then what do I eat in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening? Then it's this process of visualization to really understand every single steps you have to follow on a like a 3D vision or three-dimensional vision on how you're going to be at the final stage. So that's something, it maybe can sound complicated, but it's the first exercise to do. And then um, what is really helping you is to follow the process. And it becomes so automatic, then the brain has registered the information, and eventually you can reach your goal. But I really have to add a but, because for me that was the biggest challenge. is that we have to really work on our subconscious to make sure that the patterns from the past, 5 generation, 10, I don't know, are clean. Because when an athlete is performing, it is on a subconscious autopilot mode. Everything that we have learned is going to be expressed. But the subconscious part is the one who is in control. So if we think we are not worthy because someone put that in our brain, or people don't care, I have this wonderful product, but who is going to buy it? I mean, who wants from you that kind of stinking thinking? This is also a training to incorporate on the vision, on the visualizations.
So visualization for you is very much you have a goal in mind that can motivate you, and then you start thinking, okay, what are the exact steps to get to that goal? So then this is how my day needs to look like, this is how my food needs to be, and then you just visualize the whole time, this is everything that I'll be doing to get there. So it's a very practical visualization almost.
Yes, and the emotional part is always to put the emotion of gratitude, the emotion of joy, the emotion of faith, the emotion of happiness, to nurture that vision. And no matter what happened, then no matter what circumstances can happen, to keep on track. Because there will happen some things.
Yeah. Have you ever? I mean, it's very common in business. It's even has a name. It's called imposter syndrome. Have you ever felt like you're not good enough, being like an imposter, going to like these Olympics or something like that? Um, how do you then deal with that? I can imagine people they really want to visualize, but somewhere subconsciously, I know that I felt that like sometimes you just don't feel good enough, and then what I feel I do and my friends do that tend to succeed, they just kind of ignore it and just push harder. But I've noticed that that's not very sustainable because I also noticed with my friends they're gassing out. So how have you ever felt like an imposter, not worthy, and how do you deal with that? And has visualization some place in there? Like how do you deal with it?
That's a beautiful question, and I think it's very interesting. First of all, I have learned after so many years, and I'm still working on it, that there's no need to have the imposter syndrome because everybody has an imposter. Everybody has that. And it's really based on the memory we have on different experiences that we have had in our life from the beginning of our journey on earth. So that's a huge challenge, to that's why I come back to those three questions. you know what makes you happy, what makes you sad, and what makes you joy, what gives you so much joy, because these three emotions, they are always related to something that happened to us when we were a child. And it's only that someone, circumstance, situation push back on that button, and then it appears again. And then we want to push. For example, people really want to climb high. It's because they have been told somewhere, somehow, that they won't make it. They will never make it. And so for the result, they always want to push hard, you know. So first, accept that we don't accept. Accept that you don't accept that you have this imposter syndrome. Because when we are in denial, we push hard. But when we accept that we don't accept, then we start to think, okay, what do I need to do to really be aligned with myself? And then the real work starts. And I have learned a lot. For me, the process of that was to understand neurosciences and quantum physics, because they have helped me to understand what's going on in my brain and stop beating myself out about not winning or not being the best, of not feeling worthy, because it was actually not my fault, in sense that a pattern that was like repetitive in my head, and every time someone would push on that button, it was coming again, but I was not conscious of that. So once we are aware of that, And then we can say, oh, there you go again. Did that one, I recognize you. Get off my way, you know. So that's something very important. Why should we succeed if at the end we are broke and broken? I mean, everybody wants to have fulfillment in his life. Even people who earn billions of dollars, they will always give that answer. If you win a Grammy and you are going to a cure for drug addiction, you are not succeeding. So for me, the imposter syndrome in business, just like in top sports, takes its roots on these false informations that were wired in our brain and that we have not consciously let take part of our life. Okay. In the business of sports, it's really about that winning or losing, kill the competition, make it or go home. I mean, why? There's no need. You are talent. That's your supernatural talent. Embrace it. Happiness, joy, flow. You win or you lose. You are a champion. Then the energy is totally different. It's not about you. People don't come because you are what? No, because the experience, the emotions, the positive drive, the inspiration, and that's what people are reaching for. So for me, that's how I have learned. And of course, I'm still on the journey to really master that syndrome, imposter syndrome.
Cool. I really like that answer, and obviously you covered already some parts that you said. I quickly wanted to ask before we move on. You mentioned at one point you moved to the Netherlands now.
Yes.
So why the Netherlands? If obviously you've grown up always in France. What attracted you to the Netherlands?
The weather, of course.
Isn't the weather worse?
No, I'm joking. No, it's because my partner, he's a Dutch, and we've known each other for more than 20 years. And he has been my first fan and still. But the quality of life in the Netherlands for children is
Yeah,
really good.
true.
And I get to embrace that. And I'm very happy we did it. We lived in Paris and at a beautiful place in Paris, but still Paris was really busy and crowded. And
Yeah, Paris has really gone backwards in quality of life in the last 10 years, I'd say. The Paris I saw like 15 years ago is not the same Paris I see nowadays. I actually moved from Belgium to the Netherlands as well. Same thing. I really like the people, and the quality of life is very much better. So I like that. I want to move on to the next part because obviously we stuck really long at the first part, which is
mental,
like the whole
yeah,
mindfulness.
it's important.
The
Yeah.
second part, actually all those points that you mentioned, but we can only go chronologically. The second part was the nutritional stuff, which as an athlete you have, a very kind of almost privileged position to be in, where the best of the best look at your body and start what you mentioned, epigenetics and stuff like that. They start looking at everything, giving you the best type of food. So my question to you was, what did you discover that normal people don't know, because you had all these experts around you, specifically for your body? Can you explain, maybe for some people that don't know epigenetics, of course, what epigenetics is and how it applies to you? What kind of food were you eating? What kind of supplements? Your diet, maybe? Could you explain more?
Yes, that's very interesting because for a top athlete, if you are not healthy, you can't make it. But what does it mean to be healthy? Because many people assume that being an athlete is being healthy. Well, that's not true. And this is where we all come back together as human beings. And I have learned it the hard way. Actually, most of my career, I was injured. I had inflammations. I got 3 operations of the Achilles broken. I also got a knee broken. But in top sport, we think, oh, that's fine. It's part of the game. And some people, you take some sport like ski, for example, they have like 20 operations in one career. So for me, I would say, oh, I'm okay. But I really was sick and tired of that, and I was always tired. And when I would go to the doctors were telling me the same story. You were training a lot, so you were tired. You have a high demand, so your body create inflammations, and that's why you have injuries. But I could not accept this answer. So that's first thing. When you live in a society, it's not because you're part of that society that your body is really corresponding to the measurements. For example, when you do a blood check, in France, the results are interpreted according to a Caucasian type, you know. That's so then it's false, the interpretation. But I didn't know that because even if I was part of the best athletes in France, they were still following the same frame work. So that's the first thing. I refused. I refused the status quo. I could not accept that someone would tell me that because I could feel I was not getting better. I was always also very low with iron, and I was anemic, and I was suffering from the metabolic syndrome. So the metabolic syndrome is when you suddenly go down, like your energy go down, and then most of people take something sweet to get back. And then it's go down again, and it's like it can happen like 3 times in a day. But because I was a very resilient athlete, I would keep pushing. But one day I had the knee injury, and I was having this hyperglycemic in the middle of a training where I had to focus, run over hurdles. But I was down and my knee broken. And then I said, no, that's not possible. I have to find a solution on that. And this is how I started digging deep, searching. And this is how I understood that for athletes, there is a specific nutrition. Okay, I thought I was already on that path to know how to eat right, eat some pasta, drink some milk. But actually, I understood that it's not good for me. So I understood that I had to remove certain foods of my nutrition to avoid inflammatory reactions.
So which foods were you removing?
The gluten, milk, carbohydrates, because the genetic of me coming from a sub-Saharan Africa, especially the equatorial line, so really on the equatorial forest, it corresponds to a kind of human being who were nomads, who were living with hunting and taking what the nature gave them at the very most fundamental base. So if it was meat that was hunted and directly eaten, not a meat which was processed, full of chemicals and growth hormone and etc. But people say, oh, come on, don't be so. But if you are in top sports, it makes a huge difference because the biochemistry of being an athlete is to use all your energy to perform. But if you fill yourself with toxicity, then the body is gonna have problems. And I had signs, but I didn't know how to interpret them. So this is how slowly I had to make research, because first I refused the status quo. It's not about fashion, following a trend. I don't eat gluten, I am a vegan. No, I don't follow any of this trend. The way I have been able not to follow any trends was to understand epigenetics and specifically to do some tests, some DNA tests. Okay, because actually, if you take your saliva and you make a DNA test, you have your ID map. So you have the possibility to understand really what's inside of your body. And you can also make some allergy tests based on that. So then it's up to you. If you want to follow a diet which corresponds to your fundamental needs and that will promote you health on a longer term, that's good. Then you don't have to feel worried about not eating gluten, for example, or people telling you, yeah, but you were following a trend. For me, every time I would eat gluten, I would have this syndrome metabolic. I was getting so tired. I didn't understand why. Whereas doctors would tell me you need to eat pastas to be because it's a good carbohydrate. But for me, it was all the contrary. Pastas were like sweets. It was coming very fast in my blood, and then I had these hypoglycemic reactions, and many foods like that. So as soon as I understood, for my good sake, not for fashion, for my good sake, if I want to keep performing, I have to remove this food from my system. The decision was very easy, you know, and it made a huge difference. So, how could I prove it with my blood check? So, first I did the DNA test. I could read the map of my body. There is a company which is called DNA Fit, which is based in London. Many athletes work with that company to do the DNA tests. And then I changed doctor. Instead of going to a traditional doctor, I went to a doctor which is specialized in functional medicine. It means that after studying general medicine, they have taken 5 to 10 years to study biochemistry, immunology, and all the science who understand how to heal yourself on a cellular way and with an holistic approach. So it means instead of taking drugs, try to restore the problem with natural approach and to take responsibility of the way I would eat. I would consider my fooding, my nutrition on a daily basis. So I really changed it. I decided to eat organic, not because I want to be trendy, but because in organic food there is a little bit less of toxicity. But not all organic food have that because it has become a $1 billion industry. So it's important to know how to recognize real organic food. The best is, of course, food which is produced in a farm nearby, not so far from your home, without toxicity. And then why should we eat meat or not? I also could understand based on my blood check why if I don't eat meat, I would be victim of anemia. Because some people decide to be vegan and because they don't want to harm animals and they don't want to be responsible for that. And I really understand it because I totally agree that we have to find a solution for that. But if you prevent yourself from the specific vitamin which is only available in some specific kind of meat, which are crucial for you to stick that iron, why would you consider that? You know, on an athlete perspective, that was non-negotiable because otherwise I would not be able to keep performing. But on a non-athlete perspective, it's after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you see the transformation. Some little problems can happen. But some people will say, now I have been vegan for 10 years, 20 years, and nothing happened. It's up to them, but that's the thing. So I really have learned to, based on the results of my blood and my DNA, so that's to understand how to take care of myself on a cellular way.
That's very interesting. I somehow assumed that if you were an Olympian athlete, you'd have like the best experts in the world, but you did, but somehow they were still stuck in that traditional mindset. And my journey switching my diets it sounds almost identical. 10 years or more, I don't know, probably 10 years ago now, I was literally going through the same journey of sleeping very long. I had to sleep 2-3 times a day, had also these dips. I was going through law school at the time, very intense. And I was thinking, like, is this normal? It was so extreme. I started trying out things like biphasic sleeping and polyphasic sleeping, which is just these like tricks where you sleep twice a day but less hours, or polyphasic was you sleep 30 minutes every like 2 hours or something, like crazy things. And I just kind of assumed this was it. This is how my body is. And then I started discovering, the effects. So I started doing blood tests every couple of weeks. Started realizing certain supplement deficiencies. I started cutting out foods, reintroducing foods, and I came to the conclusion that I could point to a food and know that would make me feel bad. And so there were moments where for weeks I would eat rice and like nothing else or something like that, or a couple of days and then reintroduce different types of food, feel bad about it. And so I remember one time I was only buying biological meat because I thought, oh, biological, organic, it's good meat. But I would eat it and I would feel bad. And so then I would go on the European websites to figure out why it's biological, why it has that stamp, and figure out that it's not organic at all. So there's a difference between organic and grass-fed. And so then realizing, oh, I shouldn't be going for organic because these also get grain-fed, and that gluten goes through the meat to me and I feel bad. So my body was telling me these reactions, and then I would go and research and figure out all the bad things that were happening. And then I started switching slowly, getting in touch with farmers, getting proper eggs, starting to recognize the color of how eggs should look like. Funny you say meat. In the Netherlands, they have like these websites where they sell grass-fed meat. It's like you can like literally buy a cow.nl or something like that, and then you see all these websites. And so it's like straight from them. I remember a couple of weeks ago I started feeling bad, and I just literally emailed them and I was like, hey, do you guys only give grass-fed? Like, is it only grass-fed, or do you give some grains to your cows? And they were like, nope, it's only grass. You can even pop by and see it. And so I figured out that it wasn't the meat that was the problem, but there was something new that I was introducing into my diet because it tasted really well, and that's suddenly why I started feeling bad. But so started realizing pretty much like you, the necessity of certain foods, and then thinking certain foods are healthy, and then apparently they're not, and then finding, direct contact to find good meats. I do notice that obviously when I was researching for good diets, you have a very fanatical vegan community, and so I tried cutting out meat and stuff like that. Obviously there's the belief of the meats from the meat industry and how it's treated, and I understand that. But for me, it was always about getting healthy, and as long as I'm as healthy as possible, I'll make sure that to pass along. So I did cut my meat consumption. I do try to eat beyond meat, but I stay away from everything soy related, because the whole point of being healthy or vegan or whatever is behind it, if you're trying to be healthy at least, is not to cut to soy, which apparently gives almost similar effects as gluten, I've read, but over the longer term. So it's very, very interesting what you're saying. Although, of course, I have to mention there's also like the people who become vegan out of a belief, like they don't want to hurt animals. So then, it's not a health discussion anymore. It's sometimes when I talk with these people, it feels like a religious discussion. And then who am I to say that their, belief is wrong? So,
yeah.
But for me, it's always been health, and it's very interesting to hear that it's health for you as well. and obviously that meat has been a crucial factor to that. Obviously, adding that you have to be super careful with which meat, because if you get that processed meat, it can hurt very hard. And then I do understand going vegan, cutting out meats is an easier solution than finding your farmer and
Yeah,
getting like
but
proper meats.
yeah, that's very interesting. And I always give the metaphor of the horse, the pur sang. I don't know if you know this horse.
No.
It's in France we call it the pur sang arabe. So it's a very beautiful, majestuous horse. They have a very strong. They have a lot of power, and they are used for races. Okay, horses race, and these animals are so well treated because these people who raise them, they know they really need this specific kind of food, otherwise they are not performing, otherwise they are dying. And it's the same for lions, for animals in wild animals, you know. We know that an elephant can eat tons and tons of vegetables, whereas we understand that for a lion, if they don't have their 3 kilos of meat per day, they are gonna die, you know. I am really interested in why actually we are so eager to make compromising with our health. And then it's for us to take our own responsibility, of course, and to see the changes in the long terms. And so without judging anybody, I think that's the best way to see that. And for me, when I see the amount of mental health issues in our Western civilization, I know a lot has to do with the nutrition, and but it's very hard because many people have been are being lied to. For example, when you become vegan and you go to buy some vegan chicken, you know, and then it's this kind of mix with all kind of products, genetical modified products, and then they taste like meat, and then the brain thinks knows it's not meat.
I
But
mean, I do have to
so
add to
that's
that the vegan stuff that is coming out now, like the Beyond Meat burgers, the lab grown meats. I mean, these are really good, and they don't have all the bad things like the soy in them. I think they use peas as a base. I've seen startups go through Start Funding event. They use like insect base, and you don't taste it, luckily.
yes.
They taste actually quite good, and I'm a very picky eater. But so it's growing into a more natural, healthier thing, of course. And so vegans, due to that, are starting to become a more healthier diet. Obviously, not completely replacing, if you really like look deep into it, of a good grass-fed protein. But at the same time, like the things they used to replace it with, like you're completely right, the chemicals and everything, it was like pretty bad. It was almost worse than processed meat for the body. Obviously, you'd be saving more animals eating it, but
Yeah. That same process goes also with the supplements industry and the vitamins. And this is also something as athletes, we really into it, you know. Athletes take supplements to be able to perform at the best level. And we name them, you know, there is creatine, there is testosterone, there is all these vitamins, all these power supplements, protein powders, and etc. Okay, but it's the same problem, you know. What is inside of the product most of the time doesn't fit the person inside, you know. So it's very important also to really, if you buy supplements, to really find ways to learn how to analyze the composition of the supplements, because on a biochemistry point of view, some components don't fit together, and when we eat them, they're going to be destroyed by the digestive acids, you know. So for example, if you want to buy supplements and you want to take multivitamins, okay, and you go to the store, you say I want multivitamins, so you're going to look and then you buy it. But actually, if you mix um, um, micronutrients, minerals, with macronutrients and vitamins such as vitamin B12, B6, this is a really complicated equation for the digestive system. So the best to do is, for example, to take all the micronutrients in the evening before sleep. So magnesium, calcium, zinc, all these micronutrients, because they're really going to help you restore and regenerate, which is what the body does most of the time in the evening. But the antioxidants and the micronutrients, they are good for the morning, for the start, you know. So this is the dissociation. I don't know
Can you
if you
give some
understand.
examples of the morning ones that you would take?
Yes, so instead of buying one pill, one box of multivitamins, is to buy micronutrients and minerals, one apart, separated from the macronutrients, so vitamin B12, B6, and so separated. Iron also. The iron should also be separated from the micronutrients, from the minerals, because all this coming together makes it complicated. But if you put them apart, the digestive system is not going to struggle to integrate everything. So then you have a maximum impact on a cellular way.
So which supplements did you take as an athlete in the morning and the evening? And which supplements are you taking nowadays, not being an athlete anymore?
So as an athlete in the morning, I have learned that. Okay, so in the morning I would take the vitamin B12, B6, so a complex of antioxidants and vitamins. Okay, and then I would take them in the morning, for example. So the EM bag. So it was a little bag like this for my brand. I was sponsored by a very good brand, but I'm not gonna it's not the purpose here. So in the morning, and then in the afternoon I would eat, of course, properly, and always a little bit of carbohydrate, a little bit of fibers, a little bit of
Also, how
protein.
many times a day were you eating? Did you do fasting or anything?
Yes, but only in the evening. So fasting is actually eating as soon as possible, as early as possible, for example around 6 o'clock, and then nothing anymore. Nothing. Maybe some tea, but no food anymore. So then you have like 12, 15, 14 hours of fast naturally, and it's effortless. So that's for the fasting part. But for the supplement part, when I was an athlete, I was taking like this. And then after training, before training, I would take the BCCA, so it's amino acids. So very important to help the muscles to handle the charge of the training. And then after the training, also some BCCA and another combination of amino acid for the recovery. And for when you are not athletes, you can take the snacks as a moment to refuel yourself. So to eat dry fruits like nuts, like almonds, and make combine with a banana in the morning, it's good. But actually, what most people confuse is that they're going to take something sweet in the morning, like droves, sorry, or dry fruits, but sweets. But actually, before 1 o'clock, the body does not really need to stimulate this hyperglycemic reaction, because the body has been fasting all the night, and what it needs is good fuel. So fuel who is going slowly inside the bloodstream and distribute elements to support the morning. So this is really what I have learned, how to biohack yourself without having to go to that situation where you're going to look for drugs or products which are going to make you stay healthy and be more endurance and etc. And in top sport, the line is very thin, that you have to go to doping, because if you don't understand that the science of what I'm explaining, epigenetics and biochemistry. So it's really to know how to combine things, or how not to put together, so that you actually your body can transform and synthesize everything very fast. And it's a whole combination of things. And then in the evening, so you eat early, and you put some carbohydrates, because the brain is going to work very hard to restore the system who was busy all the day. So then you need to put some minerals, some magnesium, some calcium, to restore the nervous system, some omega, very good qualities of omega, because of course there are all kind of omegas, and it's another conversation. But to really, if you want to dig deep on that, I have learned it, but you can really learn it with expert on functional medicine and biochemistry, cellular nutrition. These are doctors who have taken the time after their 10 years study medicine to study another 5 to 10 years on that specific field.
There's so much still that I want to talk about, but we're getting to the end, and so I still want to ask these questions. We're not going to cover the last 3 points. I really, really want to, though. But my question that I had for you is, how did you make that switch from an Olympian athlete to now business? I can imagine that's usually where it goes wrong. And so take us through that journey, and obviously what you're doing now, the mindsets and everything you're doing, please.
Yes, I consider that my career as an athlete was a training for that next stage of my life. And of course, I could be complaining about all the failures I have had, but actually they were also part of the game for me. For me, it was a training to really understand what is it to unleash your supernatural talent or power. Everybody wants to be in power, but actually being an Olympic athlete, I had to train it myself, because actually you have to move to think. You have to be in motion to be performing. So you have to learn how to master all these pillars I have told you, because otherwise the performance is not at the end. But even if the performance comes, what makes you happy at the end? What makes you happy? What brings you so much joy? So for me, it was really a training to understand all of that. And that's my passion today. I really want to empower people to be at the really state of flow, you know. And mental health, nutritional health, and physical health are three fundamental. They are like a chair, you remove one feet, and you quite make it. You kind of do it, but there is always the return. So these are really fundamental. But what I like so much about the business of sports is that I have learned so many insights on how to understand the narratives of athletes, and to bring into the world of top performers, high achievers, leaders of companies, of people who want to make their dream happen. Actually, this is really sports. And that's why I consider that leaders are like modern days, athletes are like modern days leaders, but leaders are also like modern days athletes, because both have to master this, really the art of to succeed despite of circumstances, to stay in alignment despite of the competition. But actually there is no competition, and even more in this area of digitalization, and there is a place for everybody, and the people who understand that, they can succeed. And that's what I really help people on that sense, to disrupt themselves, but in a beautiful way, uh, and to
How did you get into it though? How did you make that switch from athletes to essentially a coach? That's what you're doing right now, right? A business coach.
Yeah, I'm not only a business coach, because I did an MBA on business administration. So I have skills in marketing, personal marketing, communication, public relations. So it's But the core, the fundamental is I take every business like one person, and inside the person is the superpower. So I really always start with that first. What are your values? Always people talk about Simon Sinek to remind that what is your why, but uh, there are other layers, than your why. There is also how do you get in shape? How do you get that absolutely healthy and fit body you need to perform, and what do you need to do for that? So for me, that's what I integrate. It is not negotiable because I really know that if we don't integrate that, we are going to crash. It's going to be very hard. And then, of course, the consulting on the strategy. If you are a company and you want to use sports to promote your values, I really know about that because I've been through it, from the good side to the negative sides. But that's really what I do. That's why I have named my company The Beauty of Sports, because
And
that's really
and so
beautiful.
when did you start that? Were you still being an athlete when you started it, or did
I
it happen?
started thinking about what I would do as a transition. And this is a really important word because when you're an athlete, you do like a pivot. In basketball, the pivot, it's someone who is standing still, but who is turning from the same place to check where he's going to give the ball. So you are the same person. When you change from one company to another, you are still the same person. You are pivoting. So you have to understand where are your values, because you don't switch from one place to another by without like, oh, suddenly I become that and suddenly I become. There is always a center correlation with that. So for me, it was really my passion for embracing, supporting people to embrace their supernatural talent. I wanted to use that after my career, and also to support athletes to succeed, to find sponsors, to finance their career. I don't wish that to anybody. You have talent, but you don't know how to get funded. You have a great capacity physically, but you don't know how to master your health. This is such a pity. So I have the opportunity, soon after, 1 year before I retired, so 1 year before the Olympics, to be an executive coach. So I trained people who were candidates for director position, to train them how to become like an athlete in all these pillars that I have mastered. And then I have also trained MBA candidates for business sports schools. So to really help them to directly jump on the labor industry with, there's I call it the MVP. So this is more specific on my on my work, because in business we call MVP the most valuable proposition, but me, I call it the most valuable presentation. Which is a little bit different, is in 1 minute how to be able to say this is what I stand for, these are my value, but also this is what I understand from the needs or the problem of your company, your environment, and this is what I see in the future. So in 1 minute, that's the MVP. And for the MBA's candidates, it's also very interesting because most of the time they are still in their mindset that they have to write a CV, they have to write a motivation letter, and they have to try to inspire. So that's it. But now I'm really focusing on, um, so to support companies to yeah, to get this athlete thinking mindset. And so we call it the soft skills of sports. We talk a lot about skills, but actually soft skills are very interesting. And I know now for companies it's a very important measurement, the soft skills of a person. But what if we integrate the soft skills of sports? It means the values and the rules of sports into you, so that you are really able to become a key player in a company, like someone we can rely on, someone who's always positive, someone who has a vision, someone who has a disruptive leadership. That's the soft skills of sports.
I like that. We have time for one last question, so I'll ask the question most related to the podcast, which is the impact question. So we have a segment called the Impact Stories, and the question is, what is the project you worked on that had the biggest impact? So this could be in your career or your athlete or whenever.
Yeah, it's not so easy to answer like that because now some very interesting projects are coming, but they're confidential, so I cannot talk too much about that. But yeah, for me, it was really the last Olympics, the Olympics from Rio, because I represented the country in Africa. And many experts know that Africa is going to become the future. And so at that moment, I realized the huge potential that there is to use sports to unite people, but also to promote the capacity of of the African continent to be back on track, I would say. So for me, it was really impactful, and especially because I was the flag barrier, you know, and it was a huge experience.
Nice. Um, last question, but are there any books that impacted you the most that you recommend to people, or books that you're reading right now?
Yes, one book that is two books actually. One is from Michael Jackson, sorry, not the singer, Michael Johnson, 400 runner. It is called Slide the Dragon. So this book is really interesting if you're in business because he had the genius to put his mindset of an athlete, all the strategies, all the steps to follow physically, mentally. He put it very well on this book, Slide the Dragon from Michael Jordan. And there is another book which is called
Michael Johnson slide
Michael
the.
Johnson's, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
And there is another book. It's the Tao of Sports. So this book was a very interesting book I found in my career when I didn't know how to get off this eager to be performing and willing to prove and to be the best and etc. And this book is implementing the Tao philosophy into the sports, and with really great examples about, for example, learn about egolessness, working on a team. And so this is a very interesting book. I also still read sometimes when I need.
How do you apply those learning lessons to your life then?
Um, because the journey of an athlete is really to be very close to the emotion and almost in an analytic mode. So we are most of us are really willing to learn and to unlearn. And when there is an emotion coming, we try to understand what is going on. And then I journal a lot. I'm always journaling, and so then that also gave me great insights on to follow the path and stay on track. But the huge difference that I have learned after being a top athlete is really that the game is spiritual. It's not mental.
It's not. Sorry. What?
It's not mental. It's spiritual.
How?
If
How?
you want to use another word, you could say metaphysic. Maybe that's
No, no, I
something.
get the spiritual, but can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah,
Like,
when we are mental, we only use how we want to there is a sense of control, you know. We really want to force things, but actually if we understand that how journey in this life is a spiritual journey, then we learn to give up this tendency to want to control life and circumstances, and we really learn to align with our true soul purpose, you know, which we all have in our own ways. And then there's no need to look other people what they do, or even to analyze the market. I would say in a sense that we know that we stay in alignment with our soul purpose. So that's why I say at the end, that's for me the conclusion, because if you have a talent, everybody has a talent. So it's really a question on having access to the right resources to develop it and to master it, but still at the end to stay in alignment and to have this sense of fulfillment. For me, that's really true success.
I really like that, and I think we can definitely close on that note. I mean, for me, at the end, from what I understand, it's definitely if you have that spiritual side. At one point, you just gotta let go and believe. And I think maybe that's what you mean, from what I understand. It's just that at the end of the day, when you're in that room before you have to run, you just turn it off and just believe that everything is fine. And I got a lot out of this interview, so I'm very grateful that you came on.
Thank you.
And there's so much still to unpack. Out of your 5 points, we only covered 2, and we're already at the end. But I hope to see you maybe on a different episode. And thank you so much for coming on. Any last things you want to mention? Anything you want to promote? Things you're working on?
No, if you want to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's the easy place to find everybody, actually. But to finish, it's about training, okay? It's really training. Every single things I have talked about, they don't come like this. It's really about training. And that's the beauty of sports. But we all have access to that. So keep on training.
If you like this episode, you can check out our most recent one here. And if you haven't already, make sure you click here to subscribe and see the next one. But if you're interested in more tips and tricks, then make sure to join our Facebook group where you can find thousands of like-minded people and you get direct access and support to any business question from the entire startup funding event team.